She was just the caterer's daughter, until she corrected the CEO's grammar during the annual gala. Eleanor Ellie Vance knew the gilded halls of Vandergelt Manor better than most of its inhabitants. For 20 years, her mother, Maria, had been the head caterer for the Vandergelt family, a dynasty built on old money and even older secrets. Ellie, in turn, had spent countless hours navigating the labyrinthine corridors, setting tables, arranging floral displays, and generally trying to fade into the background. She was invisible, a ghost in the Vandergelt's opulent world. Ellie wasn't supposed to be there tonight. She was supposed to be at home grading papers for her English literature students at the local community college. But Maria had come down with a sudden flu, and Ellie, ever dutiful, had stepped in to manage the Vandergelt Foundation's annual fundraising gala. The ballroom glittered. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light on impeccably dressed guests, their laughter and chatter a constant hum. Ellie, dressed in a simple black dress that was a far cry from the designer gowns around her, moved efficiently through the crowd, ensuring that every detail was perfect. She felt a familiar pang of inadequacy, a sense of not belonging. She was a scholar, a teacher, a woman who found solace in books and ideas, not in champagne flutes and social posturing. Then she saw him, Julian Vandergelt, the youngest son, the golden boy, the heir apparent. He was standing near the buffet table, holding court with a group of admirers, his charismatic smile radiating confidence. He was also, to Ellie's mortification, butchering the English language. "The dichotomy between altruism and capitalistic gain," he announced, gesturing expansively, "is like totally irregardless." Ellie froze. Irregardless was not a word. It was a grammatical abomination, a linguistic crime. She knew she should ignore it, that it was none of her business, that she was, after all, just the caterer's daughter. But the word hung in the air, a discordant note in the symphony of the evening. Before she could stop herself, she was moving towards him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. She was about to publicly correct Julian Vandergelt, a man who could buy and sell her 100 times over. Taking a deep breath, she approached the group. "Excuse me, Mr. Vandergelt," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I believe the correct word is regardless." Julian Vandergelt turned, his blue eyes widening in surprise. He was even more handsome up close, his features sharp and aristocratic. For a moment he looked genuinely confused. Then a flicker of amusement crossed his face. "And you are?" he asked, his tone laced with condescension. "Eleanor Vance," she replied. "I'm helping my mother with the catering tonight." He raised an eyebrow. "Ah, the help. Well, Eleanor Vance, I appreciate your, enthusiasm for proper grammar, but I assure you, my vocabulary is quite extensive." The surrounding guests chuckled. Ellie felt her cheeks burn. She had made a fool of herself. She should have kept her mouth shut. But then Julian's mother, Beatrice Vandergelt, glided into the group. A formidable woman with a silver mane and eyes as cold as glacial ice. Beatrice Vandergelt was the matriarch of the family, the puppet master behind the scenes. "Julian, darling," she said, her voice dripping with honeyed disdain, "must you embarrass yourself in front of our guests? And who is this person?" Julian, suddenly deflated, stammered, "Mother, this is Eleanor Vance." "She was just—" Beatrice cut him off with a wave of her hand. "I don't care who she is, she's disrupting my party. Eleanor Vance, I suggest you return to the kitchen where you belong." Ellie stood her ground, her chin lifted. "I was simply correcting a grammatical error, Mrs. Vandergelt." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "Grammatical errors are the least of your concerns, my dear. Let's just say that people in your position should know their place." The implication was clear. Ellie was not one of them. She was an outsider, an interloper, a nobody, and tonight she had dared to challenge the established order. The humiliation was profound. Ellie wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, but she refused to give Beatrice Vandergelt the satisfaction of seeing her break. "With all due respect, Mrs. Vandergelt," Ellie said, her voice trembling slightly, "grammar is important, and everyone, regardless of their social standing, deserves to use it correctly." She turned and walked away, her back ramrod straight, her head held high. The laughter and chatter of the guests seemed to follow her, a mocking chorus of disapproval. As she made her way back to the kitchen, Ellie felt a surge of anger, a burning resentment towards the Vandergelts and their arrogant sense of entitlement. They saw her as nothing more than the caterer's daughter, a servant, an invisible being. But she was more than that. She was a scholar, a teacher, a woman with a voice and a mind of her own, and she would not be silenced. This night, this humiliation, would not break her. It would fuel her. It would be the spark that ignited a fire within her, a fire that would burn brighter than any Vandergelt chandelier. Resumo temático. Uma profissional é humilhada pela família rica do noivo, que a considera interesseira, levando-a a romper o noivado e a enfrentar sabotagens, mas ela encontra apoio inesperado e usa a injustiça como motivação para se fortalecer e construir uma vida autêntica, eventualmente superando o passado e encontrando a paz. She wouldn't be just the caterer's daughter anymore. The kitchen, usually a haven of controlled chaos, now felt like a prison. The clatter of pots and pans, the shouted orders, the sizzle of food, all of it seemed to mock Ellie's earlier humiliation. She busied herself with tasks, scrubbing counters with unnecessary vigor, anything to avoid eye contact with the other staff. She knew they had heard. Whispers followed her like shadows. Maria, pale and drawn, despite her efforts to appear strong, found Ellie near the industrial sink. "Mija," she said, her voice raspy, "are you all right? I heard Beatrice Vandergelt can be difficult." Ellie forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Really. Just a little embarrassed." Maria's eyes searched Ellie's face. "Don't let them get to you. You are worth more than all of them combined. You have a good heart and a sharp mind. Never forget that." She paused, then added softly, "Julian, he came to see me earlier. Asked if you were okay." Ellie scoffed. "Oh, I'm sure he was terribly concerned. Probably wanted to make sure I hadn't contaminated the canapes with my peasant germs." Maria sighed. "Don't be bitter, Ellie. It doesn't suit you." That night, Ellie couldn't sleep. The Vandergelt's words echoed in her mind, amplified by the darkness. The help, know your place, irregardless. She tossed and turned, the injustice of it all a burning ember in her chest. The next morning, a large bouquet of white lilies arrived at her tiny apartment. A card was attached. "Eleanor," it read in elegant script, "I apologize for my mother's behavior. Perhaps we could discuss this further over coffee. Julian Vandergelt." Ellie stared at the flowers, a mixture of anger and disbelief swirling within her. Was this some kind of elaborate joke, another way to humiliate her? She almost threw them in the trash. But then, something stopped her. A flicker of curiosity, perhaps, or maybe, just maybe, a desire to prove them all wrong. She crumpled the card and threw it in the bin, but she kept the lilies. Days turned into weeks. Ellie threw herself into her teaching, finding solace in the world of literature. She challenged her students, pushing them to think critically, to question everything. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to make a difference, however small. Then one afternoon, as she was leaving campus, she saw him. Julian Vandergelt was leaning against her beat-up Honda Civic, looking impossibly handsome in a casual sweater and jeans. He straightened up as she approached, a tentative smile on his face. "Eleanor," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I had to try." Ellie stopped a few feet away, her arms crossed. "What do you want, Mr. Vandergelt? Please, call me Julian. I want to apologize. For my mother, for myself. I acted like an idiot that night. I was trying to impress people, and I said some stupid things." He looked genuinely contrite. Ellie remained skeptical. "Why should I believe you?" he sighed. "Because I'm tired of it all. The parties, the posturing, the expectations. I feel like I'm suffocating. You were the only honest person in that room that night, and you called me out on it." He paused, then took a step closer. "I know this is probably crazy, but would you have coffee with me? Just as two people talking." Ellie hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell him to get lost, to go back to his gilded cage and leave her alone. But another part of her was intrigued. There was something in his eyes, a vulnerability that she hadn't seen before. "One coffee," she said finally. "That's it." The coffee date led to another, and then another. Ellie found herself surprisingly drawn to Julian. He was intelligent, witty, and surprisingly down-to-earth. He seemed genuinely interested in her opinions, her passions, her life. He talked about his dissatisfaction with his family's business, his desire to do something meaningful. He even started attending her lectures, sitting in the back row, listening intently. Her students were both amused and bewildered by the presence of the Vandergelt heir in their humble classroom. One evening, after a particularly engaging lecture on Shakespeare, Julian took Ellie's hand. "I'm falling in love with you, Eleanor Vance," he said, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I know it's crazy, but I can't help it." Ellie's heart skipped a beat. She had to admit she was falling for him too, despite her reservations. Despite the vast chasm that separated their worlds, she couldn't deny the connection between them. But then Beatrice Vandergelt entered the picture again. During a lavish dinner party at the Vandergelt Manor, Beatrice cornered Ellie in the library. "So," she said, her voice laced with venom, "you've managed to sink your claws into my son. I must say I underestimated your ambition." Ellie stood tall, refusing to be intimidated. "I haven't done anything, Mrs. Vandergelt. Julian and I are simply spending time together." Beatrice laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "Don't play coy with me, Eleanor. I know exactly what you're after. You think you can marry into this family, become a Vandergelt, but you're wrong. That will never happen." She leaned closer, her eyes narrowed. "I will make sure of it. You may think Julian is in love with you now, but I know my son. He'll come to his senses eventually, and when he does, you'll be left with nothing." Beatrice paused, then added, her voice dripping with malice, "Besides, darling, do you really think he loves you, or the idea of rebelling against his family? Once that thrill is gone, so will he be." Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. Beatrice's words were like a poison, seeping into her heart, poisoning her newfound happiness. Was she right? Was Julian just using her? Was she just a pawn in his game against his family? That night, Julian proposed. He got down on one knee, presented her with a dazzling diamond ring, and told her how much he loved her, how he couldn't imagine his life without her. Ellie looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. She wanted to believe him, to say yes, to embrace the fairy tale. But Beatrice's words echoed in her mind, casting a shadow of doubt over everything. "Julian," she said, her voice trembling, I need some time to think." He looked surprised, hurt. "Time to think? But I just need to be sure," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I need to be sure that this is real." The next day, Ellie received an anonymous package. Inside was a file containing compromising photos of Julian with another woman. The photos were recent, taken just a few weeks ago. Ellie's world shattered. The fairy tale was over. Beatrice had won. Resumo. Temático. Uma profissional é humilhada pela família rica do noivo, que a considera interesseira, levando-a a romper o noivado e a enfrentar sabotagens. Mas ela encontra apoio inesperado e usa a injustiça como motivação para se fortalecer e construir uma vida autêntica, eventualmente superando o passado e encontrando a paz. She found the courage to face her accusers, but the real battle was against her own broken heart. The file felt like a lead weight in Ellie's hands. She stared at the glossy photos, each one a sharp shard of glass piercing her already wounded heart. Julian, laughing, embracing, kissing a woman who was decidedly not her. The woman was beautiful, sophisticated, everything Ellie was not. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, a cold, steely resolve settled over her. Beatrice Vandergelt wanted a war? Fine, she would get one. But Ellie wouldn't fight on Beatrice's terms. She wouldn't beg, plead, or try to explain. She would simply walk away, taking her dignity with her. She packed a small bag, throwing in a few clothes, her favorite books, and a framed photo of her and her mother. She wrote Julian a short note. "I know now, it's over." She left the ring on the bedside table, a glittering symbol of a love that never was. As she walked out of the apartment, she felt a strange sense of freedom. The gilded cage of the Vandergelt world had been opened, and she was finally free to fly. But where would she go? What would she do? Her mother was the obvious choice, but Ellie didn't want to burden her with her problems. Besides, she needed to do this on her own. She needed to prove to herself that she could survive, thrive, without Julian Vandergelt or his family's money. She drove to the community college, her sanctuary, her safe haven. She spent the night in her office, surrounded by books and papers, the familiar scent of old paper and ink, a comforting balm to her wounded soul. The next morning, she arrived at her first class, her face pale but her voice strong. She didn't mention Julian, the engagement, or the betrayal. She simply taught, pouring all her energy and passion into her students. After class, the department head, Professor Davies, approached her. "Eleanor," he said, his brow furrowed with concern, "I heard some rumors about you and Julian Vandergelt. Is everything all right?" Ellie hesitated. She didn't want to air her dirty laundry, but she knew she couldn't hide forever. "It's over, Professor," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He wasn't who I thought he was." Professor Davies nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry to hear that, Eleanor, but I want you to know that you have our support. You're a valuable member of this department, and we're here for you." His words were a lifeline, a small act of kindness in a sea of betrayal. Ellie felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Professor," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "That means a lot to me." That evening, as she was grading papers in her office, there was a knock on the door. It was Julian. He looked haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "Eleanor," he said, his voice pleading, Please, let me explain. Ellie stood up, her body tense. Explain what, Julian? The photos, the lies, the betrayal. It's not what it looks like, he said, stepping closer. Those photos, they were taken before I met you. Beatrice set me up. She knew I was serious about you, and she wanted to destroy us. Ellie laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Oh, please, Julian, don't insult my intelligence. You expect me to believe that your mother orchestrated this elaborate scheme, that you're just an innocent victim? Yes, he exclaimed, his voice rising. That's exactly what happened. You don't know my mother, Eleanor. She's capable of anything. Ellie stared at him, searching his eyes for the truth, but all she saw was desperation, denial, and a desperate attempt to salvage what was left of their relationship. I'm sorry, Julian, she said, her voice cold and firm. I can't trust you anymore. It's over. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Please, Eleanor, he begged. Don't do this. I love you. If you loved me, she said, her eyes filled with tears, you wouldn't have put me in this position in the first place. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there alone and defeated. The next few weeks were a blur. Ellie focused on her work, her students, and her own healing. She received several calls from Julian, but she refused to answer them. She couldn't bear to hear his voice, to listen to his excuses. Then, one morning, she received a letter from the college president. It informed her that her teaching contract would not be renewed for the following year. No reason was given. Ellie knew exactly who was behind it. Beatrice Vandergelt was systematically destroying her life, piece by piece. She had taken her love, her reputation, and now her career. She felt a surge of anger, a burning rage that threatened to consume her. But beneath the anger, she also felt a flicker of defiance. Beatrice Vandergelt may have taken everything from her, but she wouldn't break her spirit. She would fight back. She would find a way to rebuild her life, to prove to herself and to the world that she was more than just the caterer's daughter. She started looking for other jobs, but every door seemed to be closed to her. Her phone calls went unreturned. Her applications were rejected without explanation. It was clear that Beatrice Vandergelt had used her influence to blacklist her. Just when Ellie was about to lose all hope, she received an unexpected email. It was from a local bookstore owner, a woman named Clara who had heard about her situation. Clara offered her a job, managing the store's literary events and helping with book recommendations. It wasn't the career she had dreamed of, but it was a start. It was a chance to use her knowledge and passion for literature to connect with people who shared her love of books. As she walked into the bookstore for her first day of work, Ellie felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. The scent of old books, the quiet hum of conversation, the warmth of the community. It was exactly what she needed. But little did she know, this new chapter in her life would lead her down a path she never could have imagined, a path that would eventually bring her face to face with Beatrice Vandergelt once again. And this time, Ellie would be ready. Resumo temático. Uma profissional é humilhada pela família rica do noivo, que a considera interesseira, levando-a a romper o noivado e a enfrentar sabotagens, mas ela encontra apoio inesperado e usa a injustiça como motivação para se fortalecer e construir uma vida autêntica, eventualmente superando o passado e encontrando a paz. She sold her old textbooks for a pittance, but the buyer knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. The bookstore, Pages and Prose, was a haven. Clara, the owner, was a stout woman with a kind face and a passion for literature that rivaled Ellie's own. The pay wasn't great, but the atmosphere was priceless. Surrounded by books, Ellie felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since Beatrice Vandergelt had systematically dismantled her life. Her days were filled with the quiet rhythm of bookstore life, shelving books, recommending titles to customers, and organizing literary events. She started a weekly poetry slam that quickly became a local favorite, attracting students, retirees, and even a few surprisingly articulate teenagers. One afternoon, while unpacking a new shipment of books, Ellie noticed a familiar face browsing the shelves. It was David Sterling, a renowned literary agent known for discovering some of the biggest names in contemporary fiction. He was a regular at Pages and Prose, often popping in to browse and chat with Clara about the latest releases. Ellie tried to avoid him, feeling self-conscious in her simple clothes and apron. She was no longer the polished academic who had captivated Julian Vandergelt, however briefly. She was just a bookseller, a far cry from the world of literary agents and best-selling authors. But David Sterling spotted her and approached with a warm smile. "Eleanor Vance, isn't it? I thought I recognized you. I heard you were working here." Ellie braced herself, expecting a patronizing comment or a veiled reference to her failed engagement, but David Sterling surprised her. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said, his eyes twinkling. "I remember you from the Vandergelt Foundation gala. You were the one who corrected Julian's grammar, right?" Ellie blushed, mortified. "It was a mistake," she mumbled. "I shouldn't have said anything." David Sterling chuckled. "On the contrary, I found it quite refreshing. It takes courage to speak truth to power, especially in that environment." He paused, then added, "I also heard about what happened with Julian. I'm sorry, Eleanor." Ellie was taken aback by his sincerity. "Thank you," she said softly. "Listen," David Sterling continued. "I know you're an English literature scholar. Clara told me you were a professor. Have you ever considered writing a book?" Ellie blinked in surprise. "Me? Write a book? I've never thought about it." "Well, maybe you should," David Sterling said, his voice encouraging. "You have a unique perspective, a sharp mind, and a way with words. I've been looking for someone to write a biography of Emily Dickinson, but with a modern twist. Something that will appeal to a younger audience. I think you could be the perfect person for the job." Ellie was stunned. A biography of Emily Dickinson. It was a dream project, a chance to combine her love of literature with her passion for teaching. But could she really do it? Could she overcome her self-doubt in the shadow of the Vandergelts? "I don't know, Mr. Sterling," she said hesitantly. "I've never written anything like that before, and after everything that's happened..." David Sterling placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "Don't let them define you, Eleanor. Don't let them steal your dreams. You have a gift, and you deserve to share it with the world. I believe in you." His words were like a spark, igniting a fire within her. She looked into his eyes and saw genuine belief, a faith in her that she hadn't seen in herself for a long time. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'll do it." David Sterling smiled. "Excellent. I'll send you a contract tomorrow. And Eleanor," he added, "call me David." That night, Ellie couldn't sleep. She was filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She had a chance to reclaim her life, to prove to herself and to Beatrice Vandergelt that she was more than just the caterer's daughter. She spent the next few months immersed in research, devouring every book, article, and letter she could find about Emily Dickinson. She became obsessed with the poet's life, her work, and her unique perspective on the world. As she wrote, Ellie found herself pouring her own experiences into the biography. She wrote about Dickinson's struggles with isolation, her defiance of societal expectations, and her unwavering commitment to her art. She wrote about her own struggles with self-doubt, her own defiance of the Vandergelts, and her own commitment to her passion for literature. The book began to take shape, a vibrant, engaging portrait of Emily Dickinson that was both scholarly and accessible. David Sterling was thrilled with her progress, offering encouragement and guidance along the way. Then one day, Ellie received a phone call from Julian Vandergelt. "Eleanor," he said, his voice filled with remorse, "I know you don't want to talk to me, but I had to call. I heard about your book. Congratulations." Ellie was silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, Julian," she said finally. "Listen," he continued, "I know I messed up. I let my mother control me, and I hurt you deeply. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Ellie sighed. "It's over, Julian," she said softly. "There's nothing you can do to change the past." "I know," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You're an amazing woman, Eleanor, and I'm glad you're finally getting the recognition you deserve." He paused, then added, "My mother, she's not happy about your book. She's trying to sabotage it, to prevent it from being published." Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "She's contacted the publisher, threatened to pull all her advertising revenue if they publish your book. She's trying to ruin you, Eleanor." Ellie felt a surge of anger, but also a sense of determination. Beatrice Vandergelt may have tried to destroy her life, but she wouldn't succeed. She would fight back, not with anger or resentment, but with her talent, her passion, and her unwavering belief in herself. "Thank you for telling me, Julian," she said, her voice firm. "I won't let her stop me." She hung up the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that Beatrice Vandergelt would stop at nothing to destroy her, but Ellie was ready for the fight. She had nothing to lose and everything to gain. She called David Sterling, told him about Julian's warning. David was furious. "That woman is a monster," he said. "But don't worry, Eleanor. We'll find a way to get your book published, even if we have to do it ourselves." He spent the next few days contacting other publishers, but they all gave him the same answer. Beatrice Vandergelt had made it impossible to publish Ellie's book. Just when they were about to give up hope, David Sterling had an idea. "Let's self-publish," he said. We'll create our own publishing company, and we'll release your book ourselves. It'll be a David and Goliath story, a testament to the power of perseverance and the triumph of the underdog. Ellie was hesitant at first. Self-publishing was often seen as a last resort, a sign of failure. But David Sterling convinced her that it was the only way to get her book out into the world. They launched a Kickstarter campaign to raise money for the publishing costs. To their surprise, the campaign went viral. People were drawn to Ellie's story, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to her art. They raised far more money than they had anticipated. The book was finally published, and it was an instant success. Critics raved about Ellie's insightful and engaging biography of Emily Dickinson. Readers were captivated by her story, her voice, and her unique perspective. The book climbed the bestseller lists, becoming a national phenomenon. Ellie was interviewed on television, radio, and in newspapers. She became a literary sensation, a symbol of hope and inspiration for aspiring writers everywhere. One day, she received an invitation to speak at a prestigious literary festival. As she stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, she saw a familiar figure in the front row. It was Beatrice Vandergelt. Beatrice's face was pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She had tried to destroy Ellie's life, but she had failed. Ellie had not only survived, but she had thrived. She had become a success, a role model, an inspiration. After the speech, Beatrice Vandergelt approached Ellie. "You," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "You think you've won? You think you've proven something? You're still just the caterer's daughter, Eleanor." Ellie smiled, a calm, confident smile. "No, Mrs. Vandergelt," she said. "I'm Eleanor Vance, the author of a best-selling biography, and I'm finally free." She turned and walked away, leaving Beatrice Vandergelt standing there, alone and defeated. Ellie had finally found her voice, her purpose, and her peace. She had overcome the humiliation, the sabotage, and the betrayal. She had built a life of her own, a life that was authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling. And as she looked out at the crowd, she knew that her story was just beginning.